All right, we are officially at 4 after. So let's go ahead and get rolling. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you guys for joining. I am Justin. I run Midwest Mealworms here in Ashland, Missouri. I'm an admin in the Facebook group, and we do these live events. I try to do them every week. I did miss last week, unfortunately, but I try to do them every week. Different days, different times, because we've got folks from all over. We've got Paul across the pond. Gustavo is here this morning from Chile. Super awesome. So we're here to chat mealworms. Any questions you guys have, any concerns, any problems, any successes, go ahead and throw those in the comments. This is recorded, so it will be posted in the co-op group. All the comments, all that can be seen visual, and then I also post this to YouTube, to my channel there. The comments aren't visible there, so it's just me chatting. That's why I'm going to read back the questions and whatnot. If anybody asks a question or throws something out there and I seemingly ignore you, please tag me or put that question in again. Send me an instant message, DM, to alert me. Sometimes I don't see those, or Facebook doesn't actually show them to me. So we will get rolling. Shannon, have you ever eaten a mealworm? The answer there is yes. So I like to take them and feed them, put them in garlic powder for about 5 to 7 days. And then I will let them purge all of that about 2 days. And then I will throw them in the oven. So that's the straightforward way I do it. It'll discolor in the oven. It doesn't bother me though. That's a visual thing. The taste is just fine. And then I really like them as like a crouton replacement on a salad. They have that nice crunchy, as long as you dehydrate them enough, they'll have that nice crunchy feel to it, and they'll taste a little bit like garlic. So yes, I have eaten them. I don't do that very often because I'm taking from what's in there and what needs to go out the door to everybody. So eventually we'll get there. All right. Let's see. Yeah, they're actually pretty tasty. I have not used I've got a microwave dehydrator right there. There's a piece of wood kind of covering it. Right there. That doesn't discolor them, but I haven't used that and then tried to eat them. So I've used that to make some dehydrated mealworms, just to have available. But I did that a long time ago. My goal is to sell everything as live, and leave the dehydrated to the other folks. There's a really good, I'll do a plug here for somebody. There's a really good business down in Missouri, about 2 hours south of me, I think. Route 66 Mealworms. They sell dehydrated mealworms, U.S. grown dehydrated mealworms. So check them out. There was a question on the invite. Oh, what was that question? I'm gonna have to go look it up. While I'm doing that, if you guys have any questions, please let me know. Throw them down in the comments here. I thought I would remember, and I did not. Power up the computer here. Set you guys right there. Trying to load up. I saw it this morning and I thought, oh, that's a good one. I need to remember that, and here we are. And now that it's live, the comment moved. It's in discussion. It's funny, the pictures that get chosen to be the thumbnail. Anyway. Alright, if you guys are throwing any comments in there, I'm not seeing anything yet. It's a little delayed because I tried to access this Gustavo, I can see that comment. There it comes across. Is it too? I'm going to go ahead and close this down so I don't degrade things too much. Gotta find that comment. All right, so is it too different to breed superworms and mealworms? I'm developing a project with superworms, so I'm curious to know if that is difficult, how the people used to say, compared with mealworm. Very similar rearing process. Temperatures need to be a little bit warmer for superworms, and they don't do well in cold. Mealworms can be put in a refrigerator, superworms can't, but they go through the same process. So beetles party hard, they lay eggs, the eggs hatch into superworms, the superworms grow. The big difference is mealworms at that stage, the larva stage, mealworms will transition to pupa while they are in a container together with other larvae. The superworms will not. So the superworms have to be separated and put into a container on their own. Depending on what you have available, you can use deli cups, little like 1 or 2 ounce deli cups, I think they are. I use PVC tubing, so I've got a 3-inch tall piece of PVC tubing that's about, I use 2 different sizes, 3/4 of an inch and 1 inch, and I have those in a container, and I just put 1 in each individual cell. But that's the goal, is to get them separated so that they're not sensing each other's pheromones or hormones that they release, and then they will pupate. I'm struggling with superworms. They grow slower than mealworms. That's one of the other differences. It's going to take them longer from the hatchling to a harvestable or pupatable, is that a word? Pupatable larva. So it's a lot more of an investment from a time, space, feed, moisture sources, that sort of thing. And so here in the US, the superworms do demand a higher price. Because of that, just more inputs to get them to where they need to be, to a point where folks want to then feed them to their reptiles or utilize them for what they need them for. The other thing is that superworms are not they're not a super, sorry, that's a bad way to put that. They're not a high community oriented insect, meaning they like to be together, but they don't like to be farmed together. So like mealworms, you can have thousands in a tray, not a big deal. Superworms, when you do that, they are more prone to diseases and die-off. Think of it like putting a human being inside of an elevator. If you put in 10 human beings, there's a higher probability that somebody is sick, and then the rest of the individuals in that elevator are going to get sick. Similar with superworms, they're just more prone to issues like that because they don't live in dense populations out in nature. Mealworms, on the other hand, love it, thrive in it, don't have any issues with that. So those are the big ones there. I find superworms very frustrating just because I'm struggling with them personally right now. So that's probably just something that, with experience and time and research, I'll get over there. And hopefully be as successful with those as I am with the mealworms. Paul, good afternoon for you, sir. I've had an inquiry from a farm shop to stock some live mealworms, and they've asked about storing them. How long can they be kept in the fridge before they start dying off? They should, if you feed them, so bran, wheat bran, whatever substrate you're using, Paul, get them that overnight before you package them up, along with a moisture source overnight, so that they're well hydrated, well fed, and then pack them up into whatever container you're going to use. Try not to get too thick with the container, because what that will do is the thickness will cause the ones on the bottom to struggle a little bit more, lack of oxygen down there over time, etc. So the containers I'm using are 8 and 16 ounces. Let's go get a couple of those. And then I'll package those up, and I will add wheat bran in with it to help with the moisture. So mealworms will give off a bit of moisture, and the wheat bran helps absorb that. And then once they're in that fridge, they can last, if you do that feeding process, they'll last 3 weeks or more. You will start to see some die-off at about 2 weeks, but what you can do, there are a couple of options. So, and this is all depending on the shop that's going to be selling these and the deal that you work out with them, whether you do a consignment where you drop off, they don't pay anything, and then when somebody buys, they're going to get a percentage, you get a bulk of that percentage and they get some. The other option is if you just sell outright to them. They pay you, usually like over here in the US, it's a wholesale price, and then they mark it up from a retail perspective. You're paying for convenience, the store, that sort of thing. And so if you go that route, the lifespan, you want to stress the 2 to 3 week level, but the option that they have is they can always pull the container out of the fridge and give them moisture. Let them feed for about 2 to 3 hours. Throw in a slice of potatoes, some carrots, whatever, and feed them. And then take that out, take that moisture source out. Don't leave it in the container. Take it out, put the lid back on, and throw it back in the fridge. If you go the consignment route, what you want to do there is work out a process that works for you and the store to routinely swap those out. So the example I like to use is Born Feed here in Columbia is where I get my wheat bran. I visit them once a week, and I'll pick up wheat bran usually every other week, but I'll replenish the larvae, the containers that I put in their fridge, I'll replenish those. So everything or anything that doesn't sell, I take back here with me and it goes into the colony to turn into pupation mealworms. It doesn't get resold. It's going to go into the colony just to be utilized there. And then I will restock them with fresh mealworms that I just fed overnight, moistured overnight, and then delivered that day. That way they're always fresh. You're going to get much better customer responses to that. The one thing that I'll throw out is if you don't go the consignment route, if somebody's buying it directly from you, you want to find out how they're going to take care of them. Because what you don't want is if you put your brand name on that container and then somebody buys a thing of mealworms that's 4 weeks old that the store has not taken care of, they're not going to be happy. So be a little bit careful about that. There's pros and cons there, right? You want to try to market that, hey, the store is selling local, we're local, that sort of thing. But you also want to make sure that the store is going to take care of those insects if you're going to put your name on that. So from a cup perspective, here I'm using these deli cups. So here's an 8-ounce container and a 16-ounce container. These are about 4 inches in diameter. The 8-ounce holds 500 mealworms. Then I move up to the larger cup for 1,000 count. I just find that this will hold 1,000 along with wheat bran, but it gets really close to the lid, and mealworms can eat plastic, right? So they'll find the holes, right? There's some ventilation in the lid to allow the oxygen to go in and out. They'll find one of those holes, and if they can reach that hole, they're going to start eating it. So that's why I go with the taller cup for 1,000 count. This can hold up to about 2,000, and if they're in the fridge, they're not going to move around as much, so it's not as big of a concern. The bigger concern I have is somebody takes this home, concern from a mealworm getting out through that hole perspective where they start eating and get out. If somebody takes this home and it's jam-packed to the top and they leave it out, even overnight, those mealworms are going to grab that, start getting out. They're not going to have a good experience. So hopefully that helps. If any of that needs some more clarification, Paul, please let me know. A bunch of other questions here. Thank you guys for being patient. Shannon, is there a way to safely get the eggs off the bottom of the bin without damaging them? I feel the need to put the worms in the shorter bins and the beetles in the taller bin to prevent escape. Have you had escape from your bins? What I find is the dust will accumulate on the sides, and then they'll have little, it becomes a rock climbing crawl for them. They'll be able to get out. So every now and then, wipe off your containers on the inside. That should help. But to address the question on how to get the eggs off, I want to say Scott made a video about this at some point on his YouTube channel of very carefully scraping it, right? Like getting something very thin, very, very, almost sharp, so that you can scrape those eggs off the bottom. You are going to damage them. There's no way around doing that from my perspective. If you're going to try to scrape them off there, you're going to damage something. Similar, scenario though could be said about separating the beetles from the substrate whenever that happens, to move the beetles to a different tray. You're shaking that substrate, the eggs are going to be in that substrate, and you're going to shake it and damage some of those eggs. So 6 of one, half dozen the other. I feel like scraping is going to do more damage. I have not tested that myself though. That's just my personal opinion. But that's one thing. I would go check out Scott's YouTube channel, Space Coast Mealworms, and see if, I think he was just using, if I recall, it was just a piece of, maybe it was an index card or something. It doesn't have to be fancy. Something simple will do, and you just want to scrape that off and then put that into the bran on top and just leave it, right? If you don't have any mealworms in there, or pupa, or sorry, mealworms or beetles, then they're nothing to cannibalize, and then they'll just hatch out. So, all right, good questions, guys. Belazar, welcome. Good to see you again. Every 15 days, take out and give them moisture sources. Good deal. I like it. 6 so far. The cats are attacking them. Fair enough. It would be worth. It might not look like they're dirty, but the dust from opening and closing, maybe just the dust in the air from the processing of the colony, I would go ahead and wipe the inside of that with just a damp paper towel. Nothing that's going to drip down in, right? Just a damp paper towel. Wipe it off. Make sure it's clean. I don't have to use any chemicals or any cleaning agents or anything like that, just some water to get that dust off the side. What I found here, and actually I've got an example right behind me. What I found, one of the downsides to water gel crystals, if you guys look right under my nose there, right here, you can see these drips. So every now and then those water gel crystals get a little wet, a little too damp. I like that because the two dry ones just don't work well. They don't get eaten, right? But that basically builds that rock climbing wall for them to climb out, and they'll escape. So it's possible on dirty vertical surfaces that they can still climb and get out. So we clean everything now. As soon as it goes through a cycle, we harvest the worms. Then it comes over out to the front here and gets cleaned with the power washer, and then it goes back into the system to use for fresh beetles. Are the cats enjoying it though? Like, maybe that's a good thing for them. It gets them a little entertainment. Sherry, thank you for joining. The container, oh, it moved on me. The containers you use to put in the fridge, do you poke air holes? I don't know how much I need to leave my bins open for oxygen. I don't personally do it myself. I buy the lids that have the holes in them. Let me show you what those look like. They're pretty tiny, so they don't need to be humongous. So here's that lid. They're teeny, right? They're not huge at all. You're talking maybe like a push pin, right? Like that's sort of size. Is what that looks like to me. And they're all around the outside edge because these are meant to be stacked on top of each other. So if there were holes in the middle, they would just be covered. So they put holes here, and then this is probably for rigidity and whatnot. These are Fabrical. They've been drop tested. They're designed to hold insects and actually be in a vending machine, believe it or not. So I really like using them because they're sturdy, they're recyclable. I do take these back as well, so folks can bring them back and then I repurpose them, reuse them. So I really like those. If you don't, depending on what you're going to need, I buy these in bulk. They can get kind of pricey if you buy them like 25 at a time. All you really need to do is a small drill would be fine. Some people will use a hot soldering iron and just push them in there. You want to probably have, this probably isn't even 10% of the lid open. Because when they go into the fridge, they're going to go dormant. They're going to slow down. So they do still need oxygen, but they're not going to go crazy. So just to give you that visual again. Good questions, guys. Where did you get the tray mounts brackets? Lucas, I'm not sure which tray mounts you're talking about. Give me some more context there, my man. Is there a way to safely get the edge off the bottom of the bin without, or eggs? How tall are your bins for the beetle? Oh, Felicia in with the assist there. Sorry, I'm scrolling through these and trying to get them. So give me a bit of time there. Can I use Gustavo? Can I use plates of cardboard sheets to collect mealworm eggs, or will they always prefer to egg at the substrate? Interesting question. I've used cardboard sheets for superworms before, and they do lay inside of those. Mealworm, I've never tried it with mealworms because they lay on the bottom of the tray and then within the substrate. I haven't had a need to put anything in there to try to incentivize them or give them a safer place to lay eggs. But it's an interesting idea because the idea behind it is the cardboard will give them crevices to put the eggs in that they won't be then able to access and cannibalize and eat, right? So it's possible. I know I've seen people put egg cartons, things like that, cardboard in there to give more surface area within the bin to have a higher beetle population in that bin. I'm not sure if it's super beneficial from an egg laying perspective to go that route. For me personally, here in the volume we're doing, which is by no means billions of mealworms, but the cardboard actually creates a processing slowdown. So we have to then touch that thing, move it, adjust it. Beetles are going to fall. If there's eggs on it, we now are moving those eggs and getting different ages of mealworms in a tray. And so I don't use any cardboard or anything inside of the beetle bins that are laying. Oh man, it scrolled all the way to the top. Whew. There we go. All right. Oh, that was that question for Paul. Fair enough. Paul tackled it. Thank you, Paul. A question from Lucas. Oh man. Shannon, what size farm will a 4-ounce package of water gel crystals from your website take care of? Ooh, I gotta go look and see. So I know I'm using 2 pounds of crystals every week. Let's go take a look and see what 4 ounces total will get us. Worms. All right, so half a teaspoon of water crystals will get you 4 ounces of water. And what size farm will a 4-ounce package of water gel crystals from your website take care of? That's probably going to take care of 4 ounces, half a teaspoon. It's probably a week's worth in a 3 to 6 tray system. I'm trying to remember how much that half teaspoon weighs. I'm going to need to do some math, Shannon. So I need to find a piece of paper to take a note. All right, so Shannon, 4-ounce water gel crystal. How long will that last? What size colony will it support? I will get you an answer. I might do a little test and add that into. We'll weigh it out. We'll see how many it gets. We'll put it in a tray, that sort of thing. Awesome question. I love it. I have it to do now. Bradley. Hey, good to see you again. What is the best mode of action to a grain mite infestation? I was gone 6 days and came back to find I have grain mites everywhere. It happens to all of us. So you can defeat the grain mites. I'm not sure if anybody has answered some of that already. So what you need to do is stay there, camera. What you need to do is reduce your humidity. Get it below 50%. It's going to slow down your colony. That's fine. It's worth it. It'll help to eradicate the mites. So get your humidity low, down into the 20s, 30s would be ideal. Remove all moisture sources from your bin. So remember, your mealworms are what you're trying to take care of here. The mites are going to thrive with all that moisture in there, so take the moisture out. Then what you're going to do is wipe everything down, right? Depending on what your setup is, like Here I've got, I could spray things down if I wanted to. Depends on if it's in all of your colony, part of your colony, right? So you're going to need to segregate that piece or section or sections. If you've got just a grain mite infestation in a zone, basically, petroleum jelly will help contain them. Put that around, set it into a thing of water potentially, depending on what size and scale we're talking about here. But get that humidity level down, get the moisture level down, and then you're only going to feed moisture every 3 to 4 days. So start separating that out to basically starve out those grain mites from a moisture and humidity perspective. Feed your mealworms every 3 to 4 days. Give them potatoes, carrots, your normal regimen, but remove it after 2 to 3 hours. Let them eat, but take that stuff out when they're done so that no moisture resides in those bins. The other thing that you could potentially try to do is get a hold of some split pea flour. If you can't find that, it would be in like a grocery store, maybe a specialty section. I found some at Walmart, honestly, but then I started buying in bulk. So I get 25-pound bags of split peas and then I grind it myself. They're very dense and hard, so I'm not sure if like a home coffee grinder would actually grind it up. You could try that. If you can't find it, shoot me a message. I'll get you some of what I've got. I'll send it out to you. But the split pea flour, you want to apply 10% volume to your tray. So if you've got a pound of bran in there, that's going to be 16 ounces. So you're going to use 10% of that, 2 ounces basically, call it, simple math. Throw that into the bin, mix it in. It's not going to hurt the mealworms. It is going to hurt the grain mites. I also just throw that on the ground, right? Because I have that luxury here. I don't have carpet, that sort of thing. So you can take that split pea flour and put it on the ground or around whatever you're trying to contain to be able to take care of that. And again, that's going to hurt the grain mites. It's not going to hurt the colony, the mealworm colony. So roll with those. It can be beaten. I've had them 3 times. You're going to remember this. I remember 3 times in the last 5 years, 7 years. It's a pain. It happens, but you can get through it. If it gets to the point where there's like moving carpets of grain mites in your bins, it might be too far gone. It's worth a shot though. See how you can do with the lower humidity and the other options here. Hopefully some other folks have put some feedback in the comments as well, but give that a shot. Message me if you have any issues there. Happy to help. All right, move back up here. I really do not like the scrolling here. I know I harp on that a lot, but man. All right, good questions, guys. How tall are your bins for the beetle? Shannon and Felicia. All right. Shannon. Okay. Sherry. Sorry if it's been a while. We've been chatting away. Thank you for this. So sorry about the same question. I have mine in plastic. 5, maybe that's a 5-inch drawer. I leave each drawer open about ½ inch, worried I'm not giving them enough oxygen. How many are in that container? It's possible, but a ½ inch on a container is still going to be a good amount of space there, and so it should be moving oxygen in and out of there okay. Are you noticing any issues or problems? Like, are you having die-off or really slow mealworms maybe from oxygen deprivation? But I would think that a ½ inch there should be plenty. As long as it's not like completely sealed all the way around, and obviously you've got the ½ inch crack there, so I think that's probably enough. Good questions, guys. All right. Let's see, all right, we'll do a time check real quick. 3 after. All right, so we've got 27 minutes left. Throw any questions or comments or anything going on down there in the in the bottom. And if I've missed anybody, please tag me. Every now and then it doesn't show me the comment. I worked a bit this week, this past week, on the new sifting harvesting machine. I need something that does higher volume and a little bit quicker, because we're increasing production. So I'm building one of those. I got the mesh installed. I got a pan underneath it. I'm going to try to do some more testing this afternoon after delivery. Paul, just got over my first infestation. Oh, responding to Bradley. Awesome. Lower humidity, split pea flower did the job. Good. Excellent. 150 trays. It's very demoralizing when you look in your colony that you've been taking care of and basically see a moving sidewall, moving surfaces of those little grain mites. It sucks. It just sucks. But it can be defeated. All right, well, if anybody has joined recently, we're at about the halfway mark, chatting about mealworms. Any questions you guys have? I'm mobile right now, so we can get up and move around here. Leo's back in the farm right now, so we can go back there if we absolutely have to. Thanks to me. You did it. All we did was chat. That's easy. I do that all the time, right? You guys actually did the hard work. Having fun yet?
Having a blast. Hard to describe the joy. No,
Good stuff.
Everything's going well.
Good.
I got boxes to do, and then I'm going to shift out some of the trays.
Okay.
Get the frass out of them and condense them.
Okay. Wonderful.
That'll be a good morning.
Okay. I'll be wrapped up in like 25 minutes and be in there getting orders going.
Okay. I'm going to wait for the boxes and figure off of them.
Okay. All right. I tried to take the cap off. It's not there. That was Leo. He's in sifting out pupa. One of the things we've noticed is over time, we do sprinkle in a little bit of bran, and over time, that bran, obviously they turn into frass. And so depending on the stage of the bin, if there's still a decent amount of larvae in there to transition, we'll take some time and sift the frass out. And then we throw that here around the building or take that home for personal use, just in case. Felicia, my fear of having to deal with grain mites is why I try to keep my farm's humidity no higher than 60%. I get all itchy just thinking about mites of any kind. Yes. And the other thing is, like, if it's one of those things of balancing, like supreme efficiency and optimization versus trying to mitigate those risks, right? So if you keep the humidity lower, the mealworms are going to need more frequent moisture sources. So it's a little bit more labor for you, a little bit more cost depending on what moisture sources you're using and what size, obviously, your colony is. But avoiding grain mites, once you've had them, you are going to want to avoid them. So lowering the humidity is one of the best ways to combat that. And then deep freeze or cooking, heating your substrate. That's one of the other ways, because depending on where you get your substrate from, even human grade substrate, if you get wheat bran or oats or something from a grocery store selling for human consumption, there's the potential that there's still something in there. So even if it's from a store, if it's been sealed, I would still recommend treating that somehow, either with deep freeze or heat treating. And if it's in your house, keep the humidity low. You don't want grain mites in your house, right? So, good questions, guys. I wish I could find that comment. Oh, it's going to drive me nuts. The one from the very beginning. I was trying to find, somebody had left a question. Now I can't remember it. Alright, we're going to try straight on there. See if it doesn't fall as much. That's going to drive me nuts. Ah, Jennifer, Felicia already answered. Ha! I love it. I love it. Let me go through this though real quick, just for everybody else. I really enjoy that you guys are answering questions. That's awesome. I love this. Jennifer said she's moving across the country. Is it a bad idea to try to move the colony, or should I just sell them all and start fresh once I'm settled in? Follow-up question: if I take the colony with me, what's the best way to transport them? Yes, transporting is just fine. It would, Felicia, it would depend on how large your farm colony is. I plan to move at least a day's drive away in a few years, and I plan on moving as much of my farm as I can with this. I'm taking all beetles for sure, as well as a bunch of each size. All right, so Jennifer, yes, they transport well. Remember, mealworms get shipped across the country, right? So I ship them all over the place. There's folks out on the West Coast. Max is up in Oregon. We've got folks down in Florida. People are shipping all over the continental U.S., so they can handle travel. From a best way perspective, it really honestly depends on how big your farm is, and then how they're currently contained. If you're using containers that stack, then obviously stacking them up and securing them so that they don't tip over would be advisable. What I would not do is like if you have these dough proofing trays, these big white guys, they do stack inside of each other. They're actually meant to do that, designed to do that. The problem is that will cause a buildup of moisture in the bin, which is not good for the mealworms, and it'll cut off oxygen flow in there and will also increase the temperature. So make sure that they still are in an open type scenario where they're getting fresh air, the humidity can exhaust, that sort of thing. But it is 100% possible to move those guys, depending on, like I'm trying to think of some other configurations. If you've got, a tower set up, one of those Rubbermaid towers, if you can put that into the moving truck and secure it, and then maybe if you've got a temperature humidity sensor, put that thing in there so that you can see what the temperature is inside of that truck. But again, think about mail trucks, the contractor trucks that pick up mail from one location and take it to another. They're not ventilated, they're not heat or cooled, and those mealworms travel pretty safely there. So depending on the outside temperature and how you're moving them, if it's a sunny day, it's going to be a little hotter in a truck, right? But just monitor that, and maybe all that means is when you take a pit stop to get some fuel and some food, you pop that back open, let it exhaust a little bit, cool off, and then close it back up, and away you go. But yeah, they'll travel fine. They might get stressed a little. You might see a little bit more pupation as a result of that. They might delay or slow down egg laying, but it's not like they're going to close down and close up shop, and you're going to have to start off all over again anyway. It's definitely doable. If you have any follow-up questions from that, ping me. Throw it in the comments here, or send me a message. Again, it'll depend on what sort of setup you've got. If I had to move this entire farm, when we moved in the first time, we took like 15 trips moving all the insect trays, but I'm not that far away from this location versus the old location, so it wasn't that big of a deal. But if I had to move them all, an hour plus away, I'd be getting a big truck, load them all in, make sure they're secure, and then roll with it and get them moved. Really good question. Lee, welcome. No worries on being late. We're 13 past the hour, so we've got 17 more minutes till halfway through, and then I've got to get an order ready to deliver down to Jefferson City. So I do have sort of a hard stop. I probably have a little wiggle room if we get going there. All right. Felicia responded to something. Ooh, that was interesting. And I lost them all. Green mites. Trina, good to see you. I thought I would share one of the best things I've discovered. I was periodically getting what I would call a large die-off of different bins. I was giving them moisture, carrots, and potatoes, but couldn't figure out if it was an issue with pesticides, too crowded, not enough moisture, etc. I also started using water gel crystals, so someone told me about using a paper towel soaked in water for additional moisture, so I tried it. I take a paper towel, fold it in thirds to get it wet, not dripping wet, but you can still squeeze water out of it. I lay a couple in my bin that are 12 by 15, and the worms love it. I still give other water sources, but since doing this, no more die-off. So consistent moisture, right? Like I feel like that's what that's doing is, if you throw in water gel crystals, potatoes, carrots, they're going to eat that and it's going to dry up. If you throw in a paper towel, is that staying more moisture laden longer so that it's longer duration? Or is it the surface area too? So that, like when you throw that water gel crystal in or the potato slice, there's only so many that can attach to that piece, right? And so there's a battle there to try to get into, and get in and get fed. So I wonder if the surface area of that paper towel is just bigger and they can eat without having to fight each other. That's interesting. I'm trying to think in my head how I could do that at a bigger scale. Like, sponges wouldn't work. That would get real dirty. Paper towels would eventually get eaten or, like cause buildup of the little pieces, although they might just eat it completely. That's interesting. Consistent moisture. Yeah. I like that. Thank you, Trina. Shannon, am I going to give the moisture to the beetles every other day, or give them some every day? I'm going to pop in here and see this thread real quick, because I missed this initial one. So Shannon asked, am I to give moisture to the beetles every other day, or I give them something every day? Will it help with more egg production? They go through the carrots in a day. Felicia threw out some comments. I feed my farm carrots every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. They go through all the carrots within 24 hours. Just play with the amount you're feeding at one time. Each farm is going to be different depending on how you're set up and how many worms and beetles you're feeding. That sounds like a familiar answer. I like that. I would think that if they have a more consistent moisture source, they are going to be able to produce eggs without any sort of interruption, right? Because those eggs require moisture. The beetle needs to get the moisture in order to keep that process going. And so if you can consistently get those those beetles' moisture sources, then it's very likely you'll get a more consistent output. And so every 2 days, like Felicia said, I'm doing the same thing Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And what I'm noticing is, depending on the tray, I'm using water gel crystals, and what I'm noticing is sometimes those roll over into the next day. And so I think it's on the older trays, which would make sense because there's not as many active beetles in there. Some of them died off. And so those water gel crystals are lasting longer. And so I'm in an older bin, maybe they need less moisture, or there's just less of them because there's some die off there. But every 2 days is perfectly fine. If you find that they're going through it, you could touch that bin every day. You could go and look at them and see, hey, do you need more? Throw some in if it's all gone, and get a better, kind of feel for what's going on there. But like Felicia said, it's going to depend on how many are in there, what what the humidity is in the room. If you have a lower humidity, they're going to need to get more moisture from those carrots and whatnot. They're going to eat them faster. So. Good observation, though, and keep us informed on how things pan out. Trina, I think it's the surface area. They suck the water out in no time. Are they eating the paper towel? That's interesting. I would think they'd have to somehow consume the paper towel, unless they're literally like sucking it out somehow. That's very cool. Sue, I would just be really alert for mold with that much moisture from an almost wringing wet paper towel. Trina, I now also put the paper towel in with the beetles, and they also love it. Yep. Yeah, and good point, Sue. Anytime you introduce moisture like that, be mindful, watch it, see how things are turning out, and make sure you're avoiding mold. Paul, I see that question. Lee, I see something popped up here from you as well. I've had problems with the water gel crystals, and I found out why the other day. The cheaper, smaller granule ones have a tendency to get stuck to their bodies and dries off weird and can suffocate them, apparently. Oh, that's interesting. I've only ever used the large ones. I haven't tried the small ones. That's interesting. They get stuck on their bodies and dries off weird. I wonder if they're hydrated well enough too. Like I noticed that if, and the reason I mentioned this earlier, Lee, one of the downsides to the water gel crystals is if they get too wet. If you guys can see this right here, maybe I'll get my hand out of there and try it. There's some drips here, right? And you can see them because the drip got a little bit of dust, frass, substrate, whatever, in it or on it before it dried. So this created a nice highway for them to get out. And that's because for my water gel crystals, I like to have them a little wetter because when they dry up, they don't consume them because they're not drawn to them as a moisture source. But I haven't noticed that issue where, you're right, they get sticky when they're not wet enough. And then they'll dry off funky and bother the mealworms. That's interesting. Thank you for that feedback, Lee. Trina, following that thread, and then Paul, I'll tackle your question here. So Trina, yes, they do eat holes in the towels. After a few days, the paper towels get a crust on them, and you need to remove it. What if you left them in there and sprayed them? Because that's what I'm wondering. Like I'm spraying every 2 days now, the bins up to the point where they get water gel crystals. I'm wondering if, almost treat that paper towel almost like a sponge, where you re-wet it when needed, right? Like if it's still wet, don't do it. But leave it in there and just re-wet it. They'd eventually eat it all. Huh. Sorry, I got lost in my own brain there. Interesting. I like it. Keep us updated, Trina. That'd be a good one to post out to the group. Say, hey, I'm doing this, and here's what's happening. See what folks can provide there. All right, Paul, when do you do the first sift of an egg tray? So right now we're doing it once a week. So regardless of age of the bin, age of the beetles, we're doing it once a week. In the previous farm, we did it every 2 weeks, and it was purely space and time. Because in the old farm, I had a separate full-time job, so I was doing that on the mealworms on the side. Ben was also part-timing at that point. And so it was just a matter of time, the actual labor to go through and separate, sift the bins, and then space. Because if a mealworm is going to lay most of their eggs within 8 to 12 weeks. And so if you're doing it every 2 weeks, in let's say 10 weeks, you're going to have 5 trays. If you're doing it every week, in 10 weeks, you're going to have 10 trays, right? And so you need more physical space the more frequent you change. More frequent is, in my opinion, better because you're getting less of an age discrepancy from the larva size in that tray. So if you change every 2 weeks, you could have a mealworm egg get laid that day that you changed it, and then you're going to have a mealworm egg laid on day 14 when you change it. And so those mealworms are going to be very different sizes as they grow as time passes. So the shorter you can make that frequency, the better, until they get older. Because remember, there's a bell curve, basically. No, bell curve's the wrong one. It goes up a little bit as soon as they're born, and then it drops drastically over the course of 8 to 10 weeks. And so they lay a whole bunch. They're front loaded, basically. They're going to lay a whole bunch early on in their beetle lifespan, or in that 2-month period, and then they're going to start to slow down. And so the older trays that we have now, we're putting 1,500 beetles in a tray. If it's week 7 for that tray, there's very likely, going to be less eggs in that tray than a bin we just started that has fresh beetles. And that's, sort of a hit we're taking from a process efficiency perspective. You could change those younger trays out more frequently and then separate them or lengthen that as they get older. But that requires some pretty heavy duty tracking and grunt work basically to move those things around and swap at that pace. Once we've harvested the eggs, how long before you sift the frass out? I want to say it's probably like 6 weeks at this point. I don't mess with the frass until one of two things happen. Either we put too much wheat bran in and there's a buildup of frass and the larvae are large. We'll go ahead and just take the hit, the efficiency hit, because if you have to sift the frass out with substrate in it, it slows that process down tremendously. If you can sift with just frass and larvae, bang, 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 I mean, it goes fast. And so we try to time it to where we're available to sift that frass out as soon as that substrate's gone. And right now that's running at about 6 weeks. I'd like it to be, ideally it's that sweet spot where the substrate runs out as soon as they're large enough to harvest, right? But that's a timing thing. It's something that we're aiming for. But right now I would say at about the 6 week mark is when they're getting sifted, so that the process goes quickly. It takes probably half the time when there's no substrate in there. But that's going to vary based on your environment conditions and all that fun stuff. We're not waiting for any sort of depth right now, because the amount of bran that we put in that tray when it starts, I want to say it's like 500 or 600 grams. I need to double check that. But that amount of bran is being consumed by the number of mealworms we have in that tray up around the 6 week mark. And so we'll sift that tray at that point. We're not doing, like in a single container system. You need to watch those levels, and once you get, an inch thick, 3/4 of an inch, you want to sift that out and separate that frass out. We're not getting to that point here. It's more of a substrate's gone, we can sift these real fast, let's do it. Really good questions, Paul. I love it. All right. Oh, I need to do a time check. I gotta pay attention to that. All right, 4 more minutes left. Throw some questions out, comments, anything like that. I can go over a few minutes if we need to. Sue, I leave paper towels over my pupa bins and spritz those. There's a fine line though, because too much will result in gooey. Yep, it'll suffocate and kill them, right? And that's not what you want. That's not good. For pupa, I wonder, for your pupa bins, what if you put it on the side? Like you had a dedicated side that was for don't lay it on top of them, put it on the side. I'll have to think through that. Trina, I do leave them in there for a while until it's so crusted that it doesn't want to absorb water. I ordered a syringe and dispenser water back into a paper towel. I wet it until it looks wet, and then flip the towel over the other side, typically dry. I like it. I like that idea. Sue, Paul, the other issue is having worms that are large enough not to go through the sifter when you sift out the frass. It just says a real pain when there's already been chewed bran still in the tray, because it will go through the sifter with the frass. Yep, that's a good point too. You'll also get potentially dirty frass. If you're selling that frass, you want to be very mindful of that. Folks don't want to get substrate in with their frass. They want frass. That's what they're buying. Good follow-up, Sue. I love it. I love you guys throwing stuff out here. It's awesome. My stomach is starting to go crazy. I mentioned earlier I hadn't had breakfast yet, so. Talk less, drink more water, right? All right, we've got 3 minutes left here. If I have missed any questions, if you want to tag me in that real quick, I'll try to grab those. If not, I'll go through this after it posts, probably this afternoon, and just see if there's anything in there that I can respond to and tackle. This will be posted in the group. It'll be in the events section, so you can go and rewatch all the old previous episodes. You can also watch this one, obviously, and see all the good feedback we've got going in there. I'll do another one next week. Pick a different day and time. I just kind of randomize it to try to pick a different time from the previous one. just to get folks, because we've got people from all over the place. So the next one might be late in the day, and we might see Paul with a beer in his hand or something, right? At some point, I'm going to try to do maybe an evening one or a very early one, and see how that pans out. So, all right. Well, thank you guys very much. Mealworms are us. Hey, I see you up there. I see you. Okay. Let me do a quick scroll here. All right. Okay. Well, we'll go ahead and close out. Really good questions, Trina. I'm really intrigued about the paper towel thing now, and Lee for the water gel crystal info. I like that. I'm going to try to do some snippets out of this too. There's some really good feedback and whatnot. Get some snippets of these and maybe try to build a catalog of FAQs, things like that. Get them posted maybe in the file section, maybe out at mealwormsfarming.org, something like that, so that they're accessible, easily grabbable, that sort of thing. That's a side project that I'd like to get going at some point here. So thank you guys for jumping in. See the thank yous there. I appreciate it. Have a good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you're at, and we will chat again soon. Bye, guys.